The first thing Li Haiyan felt was cold so deep it reached into his bones like frozen metal fingers gripping his soul. He tried to move, but his muscles felt like stone blocks that had been sitting in winter snow for years. His eyes opened slowly, and everything looked blurry, like he was seeing the world through thick glass covered in fog. Strange purple lights danced above him in patterns he had never seen before. They moved in circles and spirals that made his head spin when he tried to follow them. The ceiling was not like any ceiling from Earth. It looked like it was made from some kind of crystal that glowed with soft blue light from inside. A shadow moved next to his bed, and Haiyan tried to turn his head to see what it was. His neck felt stiff and painful, like he had been sleeping in the wrong position for months. The shadow came closer, and he could see it was not human at all. The creature standing beside him was tall, much taller than any person Haiyan had ever seen. She had blue skin that looked smooth like polished stone and 4 arms instead of 2. Her face was kind of like a human face, but her eyes were larger, and they glowed with a soft silver light. Her mouth was smaller, and she had no hair on her head. Instead, she had something that looked like small tentacles that moved gently around her neck. She wore white clothes that looked like a doctor uniform, but made from materials that seemed to shimmer and change color slightly when she moved. Her 4 hands held different medical tools that Haiyan did not recognize. They looked more advanced than anything he remembered from his time. "Welcome back, hero," she said, and her voice was soft and musical, but also sad. "You have been frozen since the last empire collapsed." Haiyan tried to speak, but only a rough sound came from his throat. His mouth felt dry, like he had been eating sand. His tongue felt thick and strange. The alien woman noticed his difficulty and picked up a small device that looked like a silver cup. She held it to his lips, and cool water flowed into his mouth. The water tasted different than earth water, but it felt wonderful on his dry throat. "My name is Kira," she continued, speaking in perfect Korean, which surprised Haiyan so much that he almost choked on the water. "I have been taking care of frozen humans for over 300 years. You are Captain Li Haiyan of the Terran Empire military forces. You volunteered for cryosleep 847 years ago." Years. The words hit Haiyan like a punch to the stomach. He tried to sit up, but Kira gently pushed him back down with one of her 4 hands. Her touch was warm despite her strange appearance. "The Terran Empire," she said quietly, looking down at her hands. "The greatest human civilization that ever existed. It fell long ago. Captain, a plague came from the outer systems. Something we had never seen before. It killed humans, but left most other species alone. Your people fought bravely, but biology is not something you can defeat with weapons or courage." Hyun stared at the ceiling, trying to understand what she was telling him. The Terran Empire was gone. His empire, the civilization he had sworn to protect with his life, was nothing but history now. Everyone he had ever known was dead. His family, his friends, his fellow soldiers, all gone while he slept in frozen dreams. "How many?" he whispered, finally finding his voice. "How many humans are left?" Kira was quiet for a long moment. She walked to a window that Haiyan had not noticed before. With 2 of her hands, she opened curtains that seemed to be made of light itself. Outside the window was a view that made Haiyan forget to breathe. Suns hung in an alien sky, casting different colored light across a landscape that looked like something from a dream. Strange cities stretched toward the horizon, made of crystal towers that twisted and curved in impossible ways. Flying creatures that looked like they were made of metal and light carried passengers. Between the tall buildings, the sky was purple and green instead of blue, and there were 2 moons visible, even though it was daytime. "Perhaps 10,000, she said without looking back at him, scattered across dozens of worlds, most living in special areas where other species take care of them like pets or children in a zoo." The words hit Haiyan harder than any physical blow. Pet zoo animals. That was what humanity had become. The proud warriors who had built an empire spanning hundreds of worlds were now kept like exotic creatures for aliens to look at and study. "What about Earth?" he asked, though he was afraid to hear the answer. Kira turned back to him, and he could see tears in her glowing eyes, even though she was not human. "Gone, Captain. The plague made it impossible for any life to survive there. The other species tried to save it, but the contamination was too deep. Your world became a tomb." Haiyan closed his eyes and felt something break inside his chest. Earth was gone. The blue world, where humanity was born, where his ancestors had lived and loved and dreamed, was now empty. The oceans, where life first began, the forests, where early humans learned to use fire, the cities, where great minds created art and music and literature all silent forever. Why, he asked, why did you wake me up? Because Kira said, sitting down in a chair next to his bed, because something is happening. Something that might require the knowledge and experience of someone who remembers what humanity was like? When it was strong, she explained that he had been chosen carefully from among the frozen humans. He was not just any soldier, he had been Captain Lee, Hand Commander of the Soul Pride, the most powerful warship in the Terran fleet. He had won battles that military schools still studied. He had made decisions that saved millions of lives. He had been a hero when humanity needed heroes most. But now, she continued, there is a new threat coming, something that has the other species worried. They call themselves the Devourers, and they consume entire worlds. They have already destroyed several colonies, and nothing seems able to stop them. The Galactic Union has lost every battle against them. The Galactic Union has asked the government that rules the galaxy now. Kira explained, it is made up of many species working together. The Thyrans, who are warriors like lizards made of steel. The Veltar, who are beings of pure energy and incredible intelligence. The Zephyrians, who look like flying jellyfish and control all trade and money. They all work together to keep peace and order, and humans, Heian asked, are not part of the Union, she said sadly. Most species think humans are too primitive, too emotional, too unpredictable. They provide food, shelter, medical care, but humans are not considered equals. They are considered a protected species, like endangered animals. Heian felt anger building in his chest. Alongside the grief-protected species, he remembered the Terran fleet with its thousands of ships, each one a miracle of human engineering and determination. He remembered the colonies where humans had built new worlds from nothing but rock and dreams. He remembered the research stations where human scientists had unlocked secrets of the universe that had amazed even ancient alien civilizations. Captain Kira said, leaning closer, I have studied your people for centuries. I have read your histories, watched your art, listened to your music. I have seen what humans were capable of at their best. Most aliens think your empire succeeded only because humans were lucky or because they fought dirty. But I think they are wrong. I think humans had something special, something that made them great. What do you want from me? Heian asked. I want you to remember, she said. I want you to remember what it felt like to be human when humans stood proud and free. I want you to remember that feeling because I think the galaxy needs that feeling now more than it knows. The Devourers are coming, and traditional alien thinking is not enough to stop them. Maybe what we need is something unpredictable, something emotional, something human. Heian looked out the window at the alien cityscape with its impossible architecture and strange beauty. He thought about Earth gone forever, about his empire fallen, about his species reduced to pets and zoo animals. But he also thought about Kira, who had dedicated her life to caring for humans, who believed that humanity had been something special. Slowly, carefully, he sat up in bed. His body protested, but he ignored the pain. He was Captain Lee Heian of the Terran Empire. And maybe, just maybe, he was exactly what this strange new galaxy needed. 3 days after waking up, Heian felt strong enough to walk around the medical station. Kira helped him stand on shaky legs that felt like they were made of water. His muscles remembered being strong, but now they were weak, like a baby learning to take first steps. The hallways of the station were wider than any human building Heian had ever seen. The walls curved in smooth lines and glowed with soft light that came from inside the material itself. Everything looked clean and perfect, like it had been grown instead of built. The air smelled different too, like flowers mixed with something metallic. Kira walked beside him, using only 2 of her 4 arms to help steady him. Her other 2 arms carried medical devices that beeped softly as they monitored his health. She explained that the station was called Harmony Point, and it served as a medical facility for dozens of different alien species. We must be careful, she said as they walked. Some of the other species here have never seen a human before. They might stare or ask questions that seem rude to you. Remember that most aliens think humans are extinct. They see you as something very rare and special. The first alien they met made Yod stop walking and stare. Dr. Nalo looked like a giant octopus that had learned to stand upright. His skin was purple and covered in spots that changed color when he thought. His head was huge, and Heian could see his brain through transparent skin that looked like clear jelly-ate tentacles. worked as his arms, and he moved them with incredible grace. Ah, the awakened human, Dr. Nalo said in a voice that sounded like water flowing over stones. Very interesting indeed. I have been studying your species for 40 years, Captain. Li Haiyan, you are the 15th human I have helped wake up. 15th, Haiyan asked. How many humans are still frozen? Perhaps 200 on this station alone, Dr. Nalo replied. But we wake them slowly, very slowly. Your minds need time to accept what has happened to your people. If we wake too many too fast, they become very sad. Some stop eating, some stop talking, some just want to go back to sleep forever. They continued walking through the station, and Haiyan saw more aliens than he had ever imagined. Could exist. Some looked like walking trees with faces made of bark and leaves. Others appeared to be made of living crystal that sang when they moved. There were creatures that floated in the air like balloons, and others that scurried along the walls like giant insects. But what shocked Haiyan most was seeing other humans in a large room that served as a dining area. He saw about 20 people eating at tables designed for much larger beings. The humans looked small and lost among the alien furniture. Their clothes were simple gray uniforms that marked them as a protected species. Their faces showed a mixture of sadness and resignation that broke Haiyan's heart. Kira led him to a table where 2 humans sat alone. The woman looked to be in her 30s with short black hair and tired eyes. The man was older, maybe 40, with scars on his hands that showed he had been a fighter. This is Park Mina. Kira said she was an engineer on the colony ship New Seoul. She woke up 2 years ago. And this is Kim Dae. He was a soldier like you, Captain. He has been awake for 1 year. Mina looked up at Haiyan with interest. That was the first spark of life he had seen in any human face since waking. A captain, she said. Really? Which ship? The Seoul? Pride, Haiyan answered, sitting down carefully in a chair that was too big for him. Mina's eyes went wide. The Seoul. Pride, everyone knew that ship. You were the captain who held off 3 Veltar battle fleets at Proxima Station. They still teach that battle in engineering school, or they used to before. She stopped talking and looked down at her food. The reminder that their civilization was gone always hurt. Dae spoke up in a rough voice. He had not shaved in days, and his eyes looked angry. You want to know what it's like here, Captain? They feed us. They give us places to sleep. They even give us jobs if we want them, but we are pets. Smart pets that can do tricks, but still pets. What kind of jobs? Haiyan asked. Mina works in the engineering section. She fixes things that break, but they never let her design anything new. They think human technology was primitive compared to what they have now. And you? Haiyan looked at Dae. I fight, Dae said with bitterness. I fight in their arenas for entertainment. Aliens bet money on which human will win. They think it's amusing to watch us hit each other. They call it cultural preservation. Haiyan felt anger rising in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. Tell me about the government here, he said. The Galactic Union. Mina and Dae looked at each other like they were deciding how much to tell him. Finally, Mina spoke. 3 main species run everything. The Thyrans are the warriors. They look like giant lizards made of metal, and they control all military operations. They think fighting is the most important thing in life, and they respect strength above all else. The Veltar are the scientists and administrators. Dae continued. They are beings made of pure energy who can take different shapes. They are incredibly smart, and they handle all the complex government work. They think logic and knowledge are the most important things, and the Zephyrians control all trade and money. Mina added. They look like huge jellyfish that float through the air. They can live in space without ships, and they travel between star systems to do business. They think profit and efficiency are what matter most. What do they think of humans? Haiyan asked. Mina laughed, but it was not a happy sound. They think we were lucky that we built our empire by accident or by fighting dirty. They say humans are too emotional, too unpredictable to be good at anything important. They treat us like children who need to be protected from ourselves, but they are wrong, Dae said. Suddenly, both Haiyan and Mina looked at him in surprise. I have been fighting their gladiators for a year. Captain, I have beaten Theran warriors who are twice my size. I have outsmarted Veltar strategists. I have outmaneuvered Zephyrian merchants in the arena games, but they still think I am just lucky. They cannot admit that maybe humans are actually good at fighting and thinking. Haiyan spent the rest of the day talking to other humans on the station. Each person had a story of loss and frustration. There was Lee-sun, a former teacher who now cleaned floors because aliens thought human education methods were too chaotic. There was Cho Yun, a former pilot who was not allowed to fly because aliens believed human pilots were too reckless. But as Han listened to their stories, he began to notice something interesting. Every human had been told they were not good enough for important work. But every human had also found ways to do their jobs better than the aliens expected. They just were not allowed to show their full abilities. That night in his room, Hyon stared out the window at the alien city. He watched flying creatures carry passengers between crystal towers and wondered how human pilots might have done the job differently. He looked at the curved architecture and thought about how human engineers might have built the same structures. Kira visited him before he went to sleep. "You are thinking hard," she said, sitting in the chair next to his bed. "I can see it in your face." "I'm thinking about what Maina and Day told me," Han replied, "about how aliens see humans." "And what do you think?" "I think," Han said slowly, "that aliens might be wrong about more things than they realize. I think 800 years of being told that humans were primitive might have made everyone forget what humans were actually capable of." Kira nodded. "Some of us remember," she said. "Some of us have studied your history and your achievements, but we are not the ones making decisions about human policy." "Who makes those decisions?" "The High Council of the Galactic Union." Kira answered. "Representatives from all the major species. They meet on the capital world of Nexus Prime. They decide everything about how protected species like humans are treated." "Have any humans ever spoken to this council?" "Never." Kira said, "Humans are not considered ready for that level of responsibility. They are seen as too young as a species, too immature to understand complex galactic politics." Hyon was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "What if they are wrong? What if humans are not too young or too immature? What if humans are exactly what the galaxy needs right now?" "What do you mean?" "Tomorrow I want you to show me everything about these devourers. You mentioned everything about how the Union military has tried to fight them. I want to understand what kind of enemy can defeat 3 different warrior species working together." "But, Captain, please," Kira, Hyon said, looking directly into her glowing eyes, "I have a feeling that the answer to stopping the devourers might be something that no alien has thought of yet, something that only a human would try." Kira brought Hyon to the station's data center the next morning. It was a massive room filled with floating screens and holographic displays that showed information from across the galaxy. Aliens of different species worked at stations that looked like they were made of liquid metal that formed into whatever shape each user needed. "The devourers first appeared 6 months ago," Kira explained as she accessed files with her 4 hands, working on different screens at once. "They attack without warning, consuming entire planets and everything on them. No one knows where they come from or what they want. They just destroy." Hyon watched video footage of the attacks and felt his blood turn cold. The devourers looked like huge black ships shaped like insects with too many legs. Their vessels were covered in spines and moved in ways that seemed to ignore the laws of physics. When they attacked a planet, they would land and begin consuming everything: the ground, the water, the air, even the rocks themselves. "How do they consume planets?" Hyon asked. No one knows for certain," Diarnalo said, appearing behind them with his tentacles carrying data tablets. "Some kind of advanced technology that breaks down matter at the molecular level. They leave nothing behind. The planets become empty husks floating in space." "Show me the battle records," Hyon requested. Kira hesitated. "Captain, these records show our greatest defeats. Our best military minds have failed against these creatures. It might be disturbing. I need to see them," Hyon insisted. The battle records were painful to watch. Fleet after fleet of Union ships had tried to stop the devourers. Every strategy had failed. The Theron warriors charged directly at the enemy ships and were destroyed. The Vel Tar used complex tactical formations that the devourers seemed to predict perfectly. The Zephyrians tried hit-and-run attacks, but the enemy was always ready for them. After watching hours of defeats, Hyon noticed something strange. "Can I see the technical specifications of your ships?" he asked. "Of course," Dr. Nalo said, pulling up detailed blueprints. "These are our most advanced vessels, the pride of Union engineering." Hyon studied the ship designs carefully, then asked, "Can I see some historical files from before the Terran Empire fell?" "That data is very old," Kira said. "Most of it is in human languages that our computers cannot translate properly." Why do you want to see ancient information? Just curious, Han said, but his heart was beating faster. It took several hours, but they finally found archived data from the Terran period. The files were in Korean and Chinese and English languages that the Union computers had never learned to read properly. When Hyun saw the technical specifications of Terran Empire ships, he nearly fell out of his chair. Mina, he called across the data center. Come here quickly. Mina hurried over from where she had been organizing maintenance schedules. What is it, Captain? Look at this. Hyun pointed to the holographic display showing the engine specifications of his old ship, the Soul Pride. Look at the power output. Mina read the numbers and her face went pale. That cannot be right. These numbers say your ship could travel faster than anything in the current Union fleet. Hyun pulled up more files: weapon systems, communication arrays, shield generators. Every piece of Terran technology was more advanced than what the Union used now by significant margins. This makes no sense, Mina whispered. How can 800-year-old human technology be better than modern alien engineering? Les Hyun said quietly, unless alien technology is not actually more advanced. Unless they have been using simplified versions of human inventions for centuries without realizing it. They spent the rest of the day comparing human and alien technology. The evidence was overwhelming. Humans had developed faster engines, stronger weapons, better computers, more efficient life support systems. The Terran Empire had been technologically superior to every alien species they had encountered. But how is this possible? Giarnalo asked when they showed him their findings. Our records say that human technology was primitive, crude compared to alien science. Your records are wrong, Hyun said. Simply wrong. Humans were not lucky or primitive. We were actually better engineers and scientists than any species we met. The only thing that defeated us was a biological weapon, a plague, not military inferiority. Dr. Nalo examined the data with his large brain working at incredible speed. Finally, he said, if this information is accurate, then everything we have been taught about human capabilities is false. There was more. Hyun found military records showing that humans had never lost a war against aliens. Every conflict had ended in human victory or negotiated peace from a position of strength. The Terran Empire had been respected and feared throughout the galaxy, not pitied. Why was this information hidden? Mina asked. Not hidden, Hyun realized. Just forgotten. When most humans died, the aliens who survived probably tried to make sense of what happened. They could not understand how such a superior civilization could fall, so they convinced themselves that humans had never been superior at all. The implications were staggering. If alien leaders knew that human technology was actually more advanced, they might become afraid of the remaining humans. Instead of treating humans as protected pets, they might see them as potential threats. We cannot tell anyone about this, Day said when they brought him into their secret. He had joined them in the data center and listened to everything with growing amazement. If the Union government learns that humans are actually superior in technology and military strategy, they might decide that 10,000 humans are still too many. Hyun nodded, but his mind was already working on something else. These devourers, he said, what if they are not unbeatable? What if they are just using tactics that work against alien thinking patterns? What if they need to fight someone who thinks differently, someone who thinks like a human? Mina said, understanding immediately exactly. Hyun stood up and began pacing. The Union keeps trying the same strategies over and over: logical tactics, predictable formations, traditional military thinking, but humans never fought traditionally. We were creative, chaotic, unpredictable. Everything that aliens think makes us primitive might actually be exactly what is needed to defeat the devourers, but we are just 3 people, Day pointed out. Even if we are right about human capabilities, we cannot fight an entire enemy fleet by ourselves. Maybe we do not need to fight them, Hyun said. Maybe we just need to prove that human methods work. Maybe we need one victory, one impossible success that shows everyone what humans are really capable of. Kira had been listening quietly, but now she spoke. Captain, what you are suggesting is very dangerous. If you try and fail, the Union might blame all humans for wasting resources during a crisis. The government might decide that humans are too much trouble to keep alive, and if we do nothing, Hyun replied, humanity will remain pets forever. Our species will never be more than zoo animals that aliens feed and study. We will never be partners or equals. We will just slowly fade away until there are no Humans left at all. The room was quiet as everyone considered his words. Outside the windows they could see alien ships coming and going from the station, normal life continuing while the devourers consumed world after world in the outer systems. Dr. Nalo finally broke the silence. I have been studying humans for decades, he said. I have always believed that your species had potential that others did not see. If you are willing to try, Captain, if you are willing to risk everything for the chance to prove human worth, then I will help you. How Hyon asked. I know people in the Union military, Veltar commanders who value intelligence over tradition, Theron warriors who respect courage even if it comes from unexpected sources, Zephyrian merchants who understand that sometimes the biggest profits come from the most unlikely investments. I can arrange for you to meet them. And then what? Muna asked. Then we show them what humans can really do, Hyon said. We volunteer to fight the devourers. We take on a mission that everyone believes is impossible, and we succeed using methods that only humans would think. To try it was a dangerous plan, maybe even a suicidal one, but as Hyon looked around at his fellow humans, he saw something he had not seen since waking up. He saw hope, he saw determination, he saw the fire that had once built an empire spanning the stars. The Terran Empire was gone forever, but maybe it was time for humanity to rise again. 2 weeks later, the situation became desperate. News arrived that the devourers had attacked the industrial world of Titan Gate, destroying 3 manufacturing centers and consuming half the planet before Union forces could respond. The entire outer rim was in panic as refugees flooded the core worlds. Dr. Nalo arranged a meeting with General Vex, the Thyran commander responsible for sector defense. The general was massive, even for his species, standing over 3 meters tall with metallic scales that gleamed like polished steel. His eyes glowed red with barely controlled aggression, and his claws could cut through battle armor. So, this is the primitive human who thinks he can succeed where our greatest warriors have failed, General Vex said, looking down at Hyon with obvious contempt. You are smaller than I expected. Human Mostharan children are larger than you. I may be small, Hyon replied calmly, but I have advantages that size cannot provide. Such as? The general asked with amusement. That sounded like grinding metal experience fighting enemies that no one else has fought, Hyon said. I commanded fleets against alien species that your people have never encountered. I won battles using strategies that are not taught in any union military academy. General Vex laughed, a sound like breaking rocks. Human, your empire fell 8 centuries ago. Your strategies are ancient history. The galaxy has moved beyond such primitive thinking. Then why are you losing to the devourers? Hyon asked. Quietly, the general's laughter stopped immediately. His red eyes focused on Hyon with dangerous intensity. What did you say? Your forces have lost every engagement with the enemy. Hyon continued, keeping his voice steady. You have tried direct assault formations, flanking maneuvers, siege tactics, and bombardment strategies. All have failed. The devourers predict your every move because they understand how Union military doctrine works. They know exactly what you will do before you do it, General. Vex took a step toward Hyon, his claws extending. You dare suggest that Thyran warriors are predictable? I suggest that any enemy who studies your tactics long enough will learn to counter them. Hyon replied. The devourers have fought your fleets many times now. They know how Thyrans think, how Veltar plan, how Zephyrians maneuver. They cannot know how humans fight because there are no humans in your military. Dr. Nalo moved between them with his tentacles spread peacefully. General, please remember that Captain Lee commanded the Soul Pride, the ship that held off 3 battle fleets at Proxima Station. His tactical record speaks for itself. I have read the historical files, General Vex admitted grudgingly, but those battles were against primitive alien species, not an advanced enemy like the Devourers were they? Hyon asked. Show me the current battle plans for defending the next target world. Reluctantly, General Vex activated a holographic display showing detailed military formations. The Union plan involved 3 distinct phases. First, the Thyran fleet would engage the Devourers directly, drawing their attention. Second, the Veltar ships would use long-range weapons to attack from multiple angles. Third, the Zephyrians would conduct hit and run strikes to wear down enemy reserves. Hyon studied the plan for several minutes, then pointed out 6 critical flaws. The formation left the command ships exposed to flanking attacks. The timing between phases created gaps that a smart enemy could exploit the retreat routes were obvious and could be easily cut off. These are basic tactical errors, Hyun said respectfully. Any military academy student would see these problems. General Vex bristled, but Dr. Nalo urged him to listen. Captain, what would you do differently instead of separate phases? I would coordinate all three fleets simultaneously, Hyun replied. The Thyrans would not charge directly. They would appear to charge, then suddenly change direction, forcing the enemy to react. The Veltar would not attack from long range. They would move in close using the Theran ships as cover. The Zephyrians would not conduct hit-and-run strikes. They would act as mobile reserves, moving wherever they were needed most, that is, chaos. General Vex protested. No proper military formation works that way. Exactly, Hyun smiled. That is why it would work. The Devourers expect proper formations. They expect logical, predictable tactics. They cannot prepare for chaos if the chaos is controlled and purposeful. Before General Vex could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Emergency broadcasts announced that the Devourers were attacking New Garden, a heavily populated colony world with over 50 million inhabitants. The Union fleet was mobilizing for another desperate defense. Let me prove it, Heian said urgently. Give me one ship, one small vessel with a volunteer crew. Let me show you that human tactics can work where Union tactics have failed. Absolutely not, General Vex snarled. I will not waste resources on insane human experiments. The defense of New Garden went exactly as Heian had predicted. The Union fleet arrived in perfect formation and fought with disciplined courage. The Thyrans charged the enemy ship's head on. The Veltar provided supporting fire from carefully calculated positions. The Zephyrians conducted precisely timed hit-and-run attacks. The Devourers destroyed them completely. 27 Union ships were lost, including the flagship carrier Victory of Nexus. Over 8,000 alien soldiers died, and the Devourers consumed New Garden down to the bedrock. 50 million civilians became nothing but empty space and floating debris. When news of the defeat reached Harmony Point, Hyun found General Vex alone in the command center, staring at casualty reports. The proud Theran warrior looked older than his years, and his metal scales had lost their gleam. I followed every rule of proper warfare, he said without looking up. I used strategies that had worked for 300 years. I did everything correctly. You did everything predictably, Hyun said, sitting down across from the general. There is a difference. General Vex finally looked at him. What would you have done different at New Garden? I would not have tried to save the planet, Hyun replied. I would have let the Devourers land and begin consuming. Then I would have attacked their ships while they were busy. The enemy cannot predict tactics that seem to make no sense. You would have sacrificed 50 million lives to save 500 million on the next world they attack. Yes, Hyun met the general's burning gaze without flinching. Sometimes winning requires choices that feel wrong. That is what command means, making the decisions that others cannot make. The general was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, the next target will be Haven Point, a mining colony in the Outer Rim. Intelligence says the Devourers will attack within days. We have already lost 3 attempts to evacuate that world. Then let me try, Hyun said. Let me take a small rescue mission. Use human tactics to get people out while your main fleet keeps the enemy distracted, and if you fail, then you can say that humans are indeed primitive and predictable, but if I succeed, you will have to admit that maybe there are things that humans do better than anyone else in the galaxy. General Vex studied Hyun for several minutes. The massive warrior seemed to be weighing something in his mind. Finally, he said, one ship, one chance. If you fail, every human in Union space will be relocated to secure facilities for their own protection. And by protection, I mean prison. Hyun nodded. I understand. And if you succeed, if I succeed, then humans get treated as equals partners in defending the galaxy instead of pets that need to be protected. The general extended one clawed hand. Human, you have more courage than sense. But courage is something I understand. We have a deal. As they shook hands, Hyun felt the weight of his entire species' future resting on his shoulders. He had one chance to prove that humans deserved respect. One mission to show that 800 years of being treated like children was enough. Outside the window, he could see ships preparing for another hopeless battle against an enemy that seemed unbeatable. But Hyun was not thinking about the enemy. He was thinking about his crew, about Mena and Day and the handful of other humans who would risk everything to prove their worth. Tomorrow they would Find out if human chaos could defeat alien logic, if unpredictability could triumph over superior technology. If the spirit that had once built an empire could rise again from the ashes of defeat, the devourers were coming, but for the first time since waking up Hyon was ready for them. The ship they gave Heian was old and small, barely large enough for a crew of 12. It was called the Wandering Star, and it had been used for cargo transport between minor colonies. The hull showed scars from decades of service, and the engines made worrying sounds when they started up, but Mina had been working on it for 3 days straight, using her engineering knowledge and some creative modifications. She had rerouted power systems, improved the shield generators, and enhanced the sensor array. The changes were not visible from outside, but they made the ship faster and stronger than its appearance suggested. "This is Suicide Day," said as he checked weapon systems. "We are taking one tiny ship against an enemy that destroys entire fleets, not against them." Hyon corrected around them. "We are not going to fight the Devourers directly. We are going to sneak past them while they are busy with something else." The crew was entirely human, which surprised some aliens but made sense to Hyon. Humans understood each other in ways that mixed species crews could not. They could communicate with looks and gestures, develop trust quickly, and adapt to changing situations without lengthy discussions. Besides Hyon, Mina, and Day, there were 9 other humans from the station. Lee Sun, the former teacher who had learned to operate sensor equipment. Cho Yan, the former pilot who would handle navigation. Kim Han, a young man who had been frozen as a teenager but proved skilled with communications systems, and 6 others who brought various skills from their lives before the Empire fell. Kira insisted on joining them as medical officer despite protests from Dr. Nalo and General Vex. They argued that risking an alien life on a human mission was unnecessary, but Kira refused to be left behind. "I have cared for humans longer than anyone else alive," she said. "I understand how your minds work, how your bodies react to stress. If this mission succeeds, it will be because humans and aliens learned to work together. Someone needs to represent that partnership." The journey to Haven Point took 2 days. The mining colony was located in an asteroid field that made navigation difficult but also provided places to hide. The Devourers had not yet arrived, but long-range sensors showed their fleet approaching from the outer system. Haven Point was home to 30,000 miners and their families, mostly aliens from various species who extracted rare minerals from the asteroids. The Union had already tried 3 evacuation attempts, but each time the Devourers had arrived early and destroyed the rescue ships before they could save more than a few hundred people. Now, the colonists were trapped waiting for another attack they knew would come. The Union fleet was preparing for a 4th rescue attempt using traditional tactics that had already failed 3 times. Hyon had a different plan. Instead of trying to evacuate everyone at once, he would wait for the Devourers to arrive and begin their attack. Then, while the enemy was focused on consuming the planet, he would sneak in and rescue small groups of people using stealth and misdirection. The Devourers would not expect anyone to approach during an active attack, it sounds. Crazy, Cho Yan admitted as she piloted the Wandering Star through the asteroid field. But crazy might be exactly what we need. The Devourer fleet arrived exactly when intelligence predicted. 12 massive black ships that moved like living creatures through space. They were even more terrifying up close, covered in spines and organic-looking armor that seemed to shift and change as they moved. The Union Defense Fleet engaged them immediately following standard tactical doctrine. The aliens fought bravely with perfectly coordinated formations and disciplined fire patterns. Everything was done exactly according to military regulations. The Devourers destroyed them in less than an hour. Hyon watched the battle from concealment behind a large asteroid. His heart ached as he saw Union ships exploding in brilliant flashes of light. Each explosion represented hundreds of alien lives lost defending people they barely knew. But their sacrifice was not meaningless. It gave him the distraction he needed while the Devourers began landing on Haven Point and starting their consumption process. Heian moved the Wandering Star closer to the planet. He used the asteroid field for cover, changing course frequently and never maintaining a predictable path. The first rescue was from a mining station on the planet's moon. 40 workers were trapped there with no way to escape. Hyun brought his ship in fast and low, using the moon's gravity to mask their approach. The Devourers were busy on the main planet and did not notice one small ship moving quietly through the rocks. We have maybe 10 minutes before they scan this area. Mena warned, monitoring enemy communications. Load everyone as fast as possible. The miners could not believe that anyone would risk coming for them during an active attack. They climbed aboard the Wandering Star with tears in their eyes, grateful but confused by this unexpected salvation. "Why are you doing this?" one elderly Zephyrian asked, floating near Hyun as they prepared to leave. "Because no one should die alone," Hyun replied, "and because someone needs to prove that impossible rescues are not actually impossible." The second rescue was from a processing facility on the planet's surface. This was much more dangerous, because Devour ground forces were already consuming nearby areas, but Hyun had noticed that the enemy moved in predictable patterns. They consumed everything in straight lines from their landing sites outward. He landed the Wandering Star just ahead of their consumption wave, in a spot the enemy had not yet reached. 300 people were evacuated in 4 trips, each journey taking them further from the advancing Devourers. The timing was perfect, but required split-second coordination between all crew members. Day led ground teams that helped organize the panicked civilians. Lee Sun operated sensors to track enemy movements. Cho Yeon flew precision approaches that brought them within meters of the consumption zone. Kim Han coordinated communications between all teams in multiple alien languages. The third rescue was the most audacious. Hyun decided to save people from a residential complex that was already partially consumed by Devourer forces. The enemy had surrounded the area and was systematically destroying everything, but some civilians were still alive in underground shelters. No Union commander would have attempted such a rescue. The risk was too high, the chance of success too low, and the tactical benefit too small. But Hyun was not thinking like a Union commander. He was thinking like a human who refused to abandon anyone who could still be saved. The Wandering Star approached the complex using a route that made no military sense. Instead of coming in high and fast, Hyun flew low and slow, weaving between Devourer ships like he was navigating through traffic instead of enemy forces. The unusual approach confused the Devourers, who had never encountered anyone crazy enough to try such maneuvers. They rescued 200 people from those underground shelters while Devourer ships flew overhead. The enemy was so focused on their consumption patterns that they did not notice one small ship working below them. By the time the Devourers realized what was happening, Hyun had already evacuated over 8,000 people, more than the previous 3 Union rescue attempts combined. His ship was overloaded, carrying nearly 10 times its normal capacity, but everyone was alive. The enemy fleet tried to pursue them, but Hyun used the asteroid field like a 3-dimensional maze, changing direction constantly and using the rocks for cover. The Devourers could not match the unpredictable navigation of someone who was making up his route as he went along. When they reached the safety of Union space, General Vex was waiting with a fleet escort. His massive form filled the communication screen, and his red eyes showed something Hyun had not seen before. "Respect, Captain Lee," he said formally. "You have achieved something that our best military minds declared impossible. You rescued more people from Haven Point than all previous attempts combined." "How did you do?" "I did not fight the Devourers," Han replied. "I ignored them while they were focused on consumption. I focused on salvation. While they followed their programming, I followed my conscience. While they acted predictably, I acted human." The rescue made news across the entire galaxy. Alien media could not believe that humans had succeeded where Union fleets had failed. Some commentators tried to dismiss it as luck, but too many people had been saved for luck to explain everything. More importantly, other Union commanders began asking questions. If humans could conduct impossible rescues, what else might they be capable of? If one small ship with a human crew could outmaneuver an entire Devourer fleet, what could a full fleet with human tactics accomplish? General Vex called Hyun to a private meeting 3 days after the rescue. The massive Thyron looked thoughtful as he spoke. "Captain, your success at Haven Point has caused discussions at the highest levels of Union command. Some leaders are suggesting that we have underestimated human capabilities. Others worry that giving humans more responsibility might be dangerous." "Dangerous how?" Hyun asked. "Species that can succeed where everyone else fails might eventually decide they do not need partners. They might decide they want to rule instead of serve. Hyan met the general's burning gaze without flinching. General, we do not want to rule anyone, we just want to be treated as equals. We want the chance to contribute our abilities to the common defense of the galaxy. We want to be partners, not pets, and if we refuse, then the next time the Devourers attack somewhere important, you will have to handle it yourselves, using the same tactics that have failed every time before. Hyan paused, and thousands more. The High Council chamber on Nexus Prime was the most impressive building Hyan had ever seen. It was a massive sphere that floated above the capital city, held in place by gravitational fields that hummed with invisible energy inside the chamber. Representatives from dozens of species sat in concentric circles around a central platform where speakers could address the entire assembly. Hyan stood on that platform, wearing a simple blue uniform that Kira had helped him choose. He felt very small, surrounded by so many powerful aliens, but he kept his back straight and his voice steady as he prepared to speak for all humanity. Before he could begin his presentation, alarms started screaming throughout the chamber. Emergency broadcasts flooded the communication networks with terrible news. The Devourers had launched their largest attack ever, targeting the core world of Sanctuary Prime, home to over 2 billion civilians, but this attack was different from all the others. Intelligence reports showed that the Devourers somehow knew exactly where Union defense fleets were positioned. They had avoided every trap and struck at the weakest points in the defensive grid. It was as if someone had given them detailed information about Union military plans. High Chancellor Vexa Ancient Veltar, who shimmered like living starlight, called for immediate response. The entire Union fleet would mobilize to defend Sanctuary Prime using every ship and every strategy available, but Hyan could see in the faces around him that many council members believed this would be another devastating defeat. I request permission to investigate the security breach, Hyan said, stepping forward. There is a pattern to these attacks that suggests the Devourers are receiving inside information. You are here to discuss human status, Chancellor. Vex replied not to make accusations about Union security. The two issues are connected, Hyan insisted. If there are traitors working against the Union, then humans need to know about it, because we are the ones who will suffer most if the Devourers succeed in destroying galactic civilization. Several council members began arguing about whether humans should be involved in security matters, but General Vex cut through the debate with his commanding voice. The human speaks truth, he declared. I have seen Captain Lee succeed where our best efforts failed. His methods may be unorthodox, but his results cannot be denied if he believes there is treachery involved. We should listen. Der Nalo had arrived with critical evidence that he presented to the council. He had analyzed communication patterns from recent battles and found suspicious data transmissions that occurred just before each Devourer attack. The transmissions were encrypted and routed through multiple systems, but they all originated from sources within Union space. Someone is helping the Devourers, Dr. Nalo announced, his large brain pulsing with agitation. Someone with access to military intelligence is providing our enemies with strategic information. The chamber erupted in shocked voices as representatives demanded to know who could commit such betrayal. Chancellor Vex called for order, but the accusations and denials continued until Hyan stepped forward again. Let my team investigate, he said. We are outsiders with no political connections and no loyalty to any particular species. If there is corruption, we will find it, because we have nothing to gain from protecting traitors. After heated debate, the council agreed to give Hyan limited access to communication records his team of humans worked alongside Dr. Nalo and several trusted Union intelligence officers to trace the suspicious transmissions. They worked for 18 hours straight while the battle for Sanctuary Prime raged in space above them. What they discovered was shocking. A secret organization called the Pure Council had been operating within the Union government for decades. Its members believed that aliens were the rightful rulers of the galaxy and that humans represented a dangerous contamination that needed to be eliminated. They had been providing information to the Devourers, hoping that the attacks would force the Union to relocate all humans to remote worlds where they could be more easily controlled or eliminated. The Pure Council included high-ranking officials from multiple species, including some council members who were sitting in the chamber at that very moment. Their Plan was to use the Devourer crisis to justify extreme measures against humans. Then once humanity was disposed of, they would find a way to defeat or bargain with the Devourers themselves, but their plan had a fatal flaw. The Devourers did not distinguish between humans and other species. They consumed everything, regardless of politics or species loyalty. The Pure Council members were helping an enemy that would eventually destroy them. When Haiyan presented this evidence to the High Council, the chamber fell silent. Several representatives quietly left their seats and tried to escape, but Union security forces were already waiting for them. The conspiracy was larger than anyone had imagined, but now it was exposed. Chancellor Vex looked directly at Haiyan with her energy form shifting colors rapidly. Captain Lee, you have uncovered a threat that could have destroyed our entire civilization. How do you propose we proceed? First, we stop helping our enemies. Haiyan replied, we change all military codes and communication protocols so the Pure Council cannot provide more information to the Devourers. Second, we unite our forces properly instead of keeping humans separate from Union military operations. Third, we use combined tactics that blend human unpredictability with alien strengths to create strategies the Devourers cannot predict. The Council voted to implement all of Haiyan's recommendations immediately. For the first time in galactic history, humans were granted full military authority to work alongside alien forces as equals. The Wandering Star became the flagship of a new combined fleet that included ships and crews from multiple species. Working under human tactical command, the final battle against the Devourers took place in the Twin Star system, where the enemy had gathered their entire fleet for a massive assault on the galactic core. Haiyan commanded from the bridge of a massive Union battleship that had been upgraded with human engineering improvements. Mina served as chief engineer, coordinating technical teams from dozen species. Day led ground assault forces that combined human marines with Theran warriors. Kira supervised medical teams that treated wounded from all species equally. The battle began exactly as Union commanders expected. The Devourers attacked in their usual patterns, using overwhelming force and advanced technology. But this time they faced something they had never encountered before: human chaos working in perfect harmony with alien discipline. Theran warriors did not charge directly into enemy fire. Instead, they used human hit-and-run tactics to confuse and frustrate the enemy. Veltar tactical computers did not rely on logical predictions. Instead, they incorporated human intuition and creative thinking into their battle plans. Zephyrian merchants did not follow predictable trade routes. Instead, they used smuggling techniques and irregular patterns to deliver supplies where they were needed. Most of the Devourers had studied Union tactics for months, but they had no understanding of human methods. When faced with strategies that seemed to make no sense, they could not adapt quickly enough. Their own predictable patterns became weaknesses that the combined fleet exploited ruthlessly. The battle lasted for 6 hours and ended with complete victory for the Galactic Alliance. Every Devourer ship was destroyed or forced to retreat to unknown space. The threat that had terrorized the galaxy for months was ended by cooperation between species that had learned to respect each other's unique abilities. In the aftermath of victory, the High Council voted unanimously to grant humans full citizenship in the Galactic Union. All protective restrictions were removed, and humans were invited to participate equally in government, military service, scientific research, and commerce. The age of treating humans as zoo animals was officially ended. Haiyan was promoted to admiral and given command of the new multi-species defense force that would protect the galaxy using combined tactics developed by humans and aliens working together. Mina became chief engineer of the Advanced Technology Development Center, where she led teams that created innovations none of them could have achieved alone. Day established the Galactic Military Academy, where officers from all species learned to fight using both traditional methods and creative human approaches. But perhaps the most important change was in how species viewed each other. The victory against the Devourers had proven that cooperation was stronger than competition, that diversity was more valuable than uniformity, that different ways of thinking could solve problems that any single approach could not handle. Haiyan stood on the observation deck of his flagship, watching ships from dozens of species working together in joint exercises. The sight reminded him of the Terran Empire, but this was something even greater. This was not one species dominating others, but all species contributing their best qualities to shared goals. Kira joined him at the observation window, her forearms moving gracefully as she worked on medical reports. Her silver eyes reflected the light from passing ships as she spoke. Do you ever regret waking up? She asked. Do you ever wish you could have stayed frozen and avoided all this responsibility? Never, Hyan replied. 800 years ago, I thought the greatest thing humans could do was build an empire that would last forever, but empires always fall. What we have built here is something better, an alliance based on mutual respect and shared purpose. This might actually last. What makes you so confident? Because it is not held.